Hello there. Welcome back to CoSeCity, where we decode corporate governance in real life. I'm Neo.
And I'm Kako. Thanks for tuning in again. And if you missed our first episode, go back, check it out. We broke down what corporate governance actually is and why it matters in every company. Welcome to episode 2, titled Core Principles of Corporate Governance.
Yeah, so as Kako said, today we'll be diving into something that sits at the very heart of corporate governance. So it's core principles. We're talking about accountability, transparency, fairness and equity, and responsibility. What they mean, how they work in practice, and what real talk happens when they are missing.
Hmm. These principles aren't just buzzwords. They are the foundations of good business, ethical leadership, and long-term success. So let's unpack each one. We can kick off with accountability. When most people hear that word, they think of someone being blamed when something goes wrong or someone being held responsible. In governance, accountability, I'd say, simply means being proactive and not just reactive. What do you think, Neo?
No, exactly. I think it's about being answerable before crisis kicks off. It's knowing that when you make a decision, you're being held responsible for it financially, legally, and ethically. And that's why companies must have accurate, well kept records. Definitely something that resonates when we work together is remembering our old manager telling us to make sure that our records were up to date.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Neo, we said we were going to share with the listeners where we worked together. We didn't do that the first episode.
Oh, yes, we
Yeah,
didn't.
we did work together in my first role, which Neo was very, very helpful and kind to help show me the ropes I started, help me get settled in. And I learned a lot working with you, Neo. Thank you very much for that.
You're far too kind. I suppose this is also where I flagged that it was my very first governance role. I was a career changer. And yeah, I think definitely working in a professional services setting helped. I speak for myself when I say this, but I would say it helped me really get to pick up the ropes very, very, very quickly. So
Yeah, it does. It does. So yeah, back to accountability. Um,
yes. So what was I saying? Yeah. So we were talking about making sure that we keep our records very, very well. Um, and that is about making sure that board minutes, for example, decision logs, registers of interest, so that entire admin audit trail is kept up to date.
and it's also about role clarity, isn't it? Who
Hmm.
makes decision? Who signs those decisions off? And who reviews the risk? Strong governance means everyone knows their duties, from the CEO of the board to committee chairs. That way, no one can say, I don't know, it was not my job, because there's clarity. So I think it's also about role clarity here.
No, 100%. I mean, you'd be very surprised how many governance breakdowns come from confusion, not just corruption. So even good people make poor decisions, like when roles, expectations, or reporting lines are very vague. I mean, I'm sure we've come across either case study examples or real life examples of when this has happened in previous roles we've held, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And we can now talk about how company secretaries ties into all of what we've been speaking about. Because for company secretaries, we often serve as the glue. We're tracking resolutions, we're making sure board members declare conflicts of interest, we're following up with action points. We are not just there to take minutes, we track momentum and integrity as well and ensure that accountability is upheld at every level.
Yeah, I like that, tracking integrity. And let's not forget that accountability also builds internal trust. So
Mm.
when employees see leaders owning their actions, it sets the tone, isn't it? It gives them the confidence to speak up, to flag risks, or even better, challenge decisions if they don't quite make sense to them.
You're right, you're right, you're right. It's about culture.
Mm,
Where there's no accountability, governance is weak and risks increases. But where accountability is strong, performance, ethics, and transparency tends to follow.
yeah, I think that's a really good summation there. I think up next, then, we've got transparency. I like to call this the trust builder. It's one thing to do the right thing, but stakeholders need to see you doing it.
Mm. Absolutely, absolutely. Transparency is about openness and honesty. It means sharing information that matters, whether it be financial performance, risk exposure, leadership decisions, even.
Yeah. And the key word there is matters.
Mm.
Governance transparency isn't about flooding people with information, it's about giving access to accurate, relevant, and timely disclosures.
Yeah, you're right. Reporting is crucial. And one of my favorite example of this disclosure, even though others are quite important, but executives pay. Shareholders increasingly want to know what are top leaders earning? What does that, or how rather, how does that align with company performance? Transparency here also creates trust and, or at the same time, or pressure for change.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, we're also seeing more demands for transparency around ESG. So, we want to understand what the environmental impacts are. Are the workers in supply chains being treated fairly? Investors want to know more than numbers, and they want, narrative around such said values.
Yeah, those disclosures are crucial. And let's be real, transparency reduces the room for misconduct. When things are out in the open, people are more likely to act ethically. We can cite several corporate collapses as examples of this, but hidden decisions, vague reporting, backdoor deals, um, in those spaces, that's where governance collapses.
It sounded like Big Brother, isn't it?
It did.
Yeah, so as company secretaries, we often manage communications to shareholders, to regulators, as well as to internal teams. We make sure that disclosures are clear and we push for openness even when it's uncomfortable. I think
Yeah,
definitely when it's uncomfortable,
yeah,
it has to be done.
yeah. Because transparency isn't always easy,
Mm,
but the cost for secrecy or lack of so much higher.
very true. I suppose in the next point then to talk about is what fairness and equity, because I think that these are often misunderstood. So fairness isn't about treating everyone exactly the same. It's about treating them justly.
That is a very interesting and powerful distinction. Equity, on the other hand, recognizes that people start from different places,
Hmm.
have different needs, and face different challenges and barriers. Good governance understands and responds to that appropriately.
Yeah, exactly. So take shareholders, for instance. A fair governance structure ensures minority shareholders have a voice. It prevents the majority for dominating every vote or decision, especially when it affects everyone. I think the last thing you want is somebody being selfish about their decision and, being the sole benefactors of said decision, isn't it?
Mm. And internally, fairness also applies to how company street employees, contractors, even customers, or rather, especially customers,
Yeah.
um, are hiring decisions free from bias. Other questions you might want to consider is, are grievances handled fairly? Is leadership accessible and inclusive? Key questions.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one other area of fairness that's really evolving in the boardroom is boardroom diversity.
Mm,
A board full of people who look and think the same is more prone to groupthink and blind spots. I think that nobody really would want to either work for a company or deal with a company that just doesn't quite reflect the community that it operates in, isn't it?
yeah. Fun fact, my dissertation in my master's looked at boardroom diversity.
Me too,
Anyway.
actually.
Yeah, oh, really? Oh, I
Yeah.
see, I see. Um, but you're right. Yeah, definitely. So that shows that this shows that governance must reflect society
Mm.
in terms of diversity. We're not just talking about gender, we're not just talking about age, ethnic diversity, skills diversity, socioeconomic background. All of it matters as well, not just ethnic diversity, but also for performance as well. It boosts performance of the business. Several studies and research shows that.
Yeah, that's true. And fair governance isn't about just policies, it's about practice. Are the rules being applied consistently? Are exceptions being justified? And when fairness breaks down, it affects morale, so and retention, reputation, as well as, exposes the organization to legal risk. So how are you managing all of this?
Yeah, yeah. And as CoSecs, we advocate for inclusivity in board appointments, transparent remunerations, and clear policies on whistleblowing when grievances comes out, how that's been handled, and diversity reporting as well. We're also watching how fairness plays out in real time inside and outside of the boardroom
Yeah,
across the company as a whole.
yeah, for sure. And
Um,
I think just to interrupt you there, sorry, I was going to
Go
say
ahead,
we should
please.
probably explain what CoSec is because we have been the we have been in the industry for a very long time, and we're going to be using CoSec, Company Secretary, and Governance Professional interchangeably.
Do you think they're the same things?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. For the purpose of this podcast, when we say governance professionals, I think governance professionals might have slightly wider coverage, but definitely when we say company secretaries and COSECs, for our newer listeners out there, we're saying the same thing. So I think I just used the word COSEC there earlier. So thanks for flagging that up to highlight that definition. Thank you, Nail. But the next we would discuss is responsibility. Yes, responsibility. Responsibility. This is the heart of ethical leadership, Neil. It's about doing what is right, not just what we are as a business allowed to do, not just what we can get away with, but
Mm,
doing what is right.
yeah, exactly right. I think responsibility is about governance best practice, going above the legal minimum, thinking long term, and owning the social and environmental impact of whatever decisions have been taken.
Yeah, yeah. We see it especially in crisis situations. There's several examples of this we can highlight too, but the lessons from these corporate collapses is, does the board or did the board communicate openly? Do they prioritize people over profits? Do they repair trust? Responsibility is about owning not just your wins, but your failures too.
Yeah, exactly. And it also includes risk oversight. So governance isn't about compliance, So, or rather, should I say, it's not just about compliance, but it's also about resilience.
Yeah.
Responsible boards prepare for disruptions, and economic shifts. They prepare for cyber attacks, and they also prepare for ESG crises.
Yeah.
They don't react; they anticipate said, challenges.
And on that point, I've also seen boards make tough decisions, such as delaying dividends, freezing bonuses, or pulling out of some certain partnerships that they find unethical or for any other reason.
Mm.
These aren't easy calls to make, but they show leadership, they show responsibility, maturity, and the right type of stewardship you want your leaders to, within a business to demonstrate.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think especially where a board was looking to make a serious profit of, for example, a partnership, as you've, given example there, it's never an easy call, but rather lose out on money rather than, having to get your integrity called into question, isn't it?
Hmm. Correct, correct.
But as company secretaries here, like our role is huge. So we shape governance policies, we guide the ethical framework, and we help boards stay true to their values even under pressure.
And responsibility also means understanding that a business doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Mm,
It operates within a community.
yeah.
It affects people's lives, people's livelihood, the environment, and even the future generations.
Yeah, no, exactly right. It's not just about what your company can get away with. It's about what it should do and what it stands for.
Exactly, exactly. So that is a beautiful summation that you just mentioned there, and that wraps up our episode for today. We've walked through the four pillars of good governance, which are accountability, owning decisions, and maintaining traceability, transparency, communicating openly and clearly, fairness and equity, which is ensuring justice, inclusion, and ethical leadership prevails. And finally, responsibility, doing what's right, not just what we can get away with.
And remember, there aren't just concepts that they're how we've built from trust. We ensure compliance and create conditions for long-term success. So there are principles we live by in every board meeting, every filing, and every governance decision. I think next time on CoSeCity, we'll be diving into the ESG imperative or, environmental social governance, how company secretaries are now key drivers of sustainability, ethical governance, and how they impact long-term strategy. ESG is no longer a nice to have, it's a leadership priority. And we'll break down how to own that space with clarity and with purpose.
Excellent. So make sure you're subscribed, share with your network, and drop us a message. We'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, and experiences. See you next time.